This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Sierra Leone oil tanker explosion kills at least 90 people in the capital. Sudanese protesters have continued calls for nationwide strikes against the military takeover. And thousands of Ethiopians enlist to join the country's National Defense Force. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. We start off with the latest from Sierra Leone, where the fuel tanker blast on Friday has killed at least 90 and injured above 200 people. Officials say the injured are nursing various degrees of burns in different hospitals. Severely burned casualties were admitted to intensive care units. Vice President Mohamed Julda Jallo has visited the hospital and assured of government support. The National Disaster Management in Sierra Leone has established an incident command center at the scene of the incident to ensure proper coordination. The accident occurred on Friday when a fuel tanker collided with a vehicle and eventually burst into flames. Well, for the latest update on developments in Sierra Leone, we spoke with Othniel Gooding, a local journalist based in the capital, Freetown. Let's listen in.
According to the Vice President this morning, the death toll was at 90. There are some who are in critical conditions who are at the ICU currently, and those whose conditions are not too severe are currently at the outpatient ward of the main referral hospital in Freetown. So, according to the Vice President this morning, he went to the scene and he spoke with residents. He said so far there have been like 90 fatalities, and some are currently admitted at the main referral hospital, Connaught Hospital, where those who are severely injured are at the ICU, while those with minor injuries are at outpatient. So, roughly it's about 200 people who have been hospitalized because they are still doing head counts. There were lots of turnout in terms of medical practitioners. Lots of nurses and doctors came out at night to take care of the victims, and they have increased hospital bed because the hospital was actually overwhelmed by victims. So, so far so good. The medical practitioners are trying to put the situation under control.
Thousands of Ethiopians are voluntarily enlisting to join the country's National Defense Force. This is after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed called on citizens to defend the nation's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Meanwhile, the capital Addis Ababa and almost all cities south of it remain calm days after a nationwide state of emergency was declared. Here's CGTN's Zagrum Chala with more.
Hundreds of thousands converged along streets, stadiums and public squares across Ethiopia. They were here in solidarity with the federal government and echoing their resentment against the TPLF. People here say that 27 years of a TPLF-led leadership no longer had a place in the current Ethiopian political landscape.
Everybody is chanting in one voice and responds to the government's call. This is intended to save our country from the brink. We do not wish to see a return of any past regime. We would like to sustain the already existing change. So people are united for a national cause, and only we can decide our fate.
I say whatever is being done here is just to warrant our peace. We all have responsibilities and make sure we okay our respective roles. We will never want to repeat the past. Never. I say what we are doing is correct.
And following the call by the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed urging citizens to fight and defend the sovereignty of the nation, thousands of nationals turned out to be enlisted into the army. People say they will continue responding to the government's calls until peace is achieved.
Young or old or anyone else must fight for the freedom of our nation. This is not something one negotiates about. There I say we all head to the battlefield. You know what this is, the only country we have, and we are ready to defend her at any cost.
It is mandatory for us to voluntarily join the army. We've had people heading to the camp from Addis Ababa just the other day, and the young people from different regional states are also being enlisted. This is what must happen at this crucial moment in our history.
It's been days since the nationwide state of emergency was declared. However, daily life in the capital Addis Ababa remains largely calm and uninterrupted. People continue their daily activities. We have, however, seen random checkpoints to bolster security as police search cars and people, especially at night. Diplomatic pressure continues to mount on the central government and the TPLF to put down arms, end the war and resolve the one-year-old conflict peacefully. The UN, AU, EU and the United States kept on pushing for that. The regional authority IGAD too is adding a voice to this call. CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Sudanese protesters have continued calls for nationwide strikes against the military takeover. The latest institution that has reportedly joined the movement is the University of Khartoum. It's said to have condemned what it calls the army's violent actions. The university alleges that some of its faculty and students have been beaten and robbed by people in military uniform. Sudan's protest movement is calling for the establishment of a civilian government to lead to a democracy. The Sudanese military seized power on October the 25th, dissolving the transitional administration and arresting dozens of officials and politicians. You're watching Africa Live. More news after the break. Here's what's ahead. And how a Kenyan community is conserving mangroves to combat climate change. Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. Protesters Saturday took to the streets of London to demand radical action rather than words to deal with climate change. This as the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow neared the end of its first week. The march was one of many planned across the world by a coalition of environmental groups. Saturday's talks at COP26 focused on issues such as land use and sustainable agriculture. A coalition of 45 countries is expected to pledge urgent action and investment to protect nature and shift to more sustainable ways of farming. For many of the protesters in London, the pledges made by world leaders ring hollow.
I don't believe that any of the politicians, any of the world leaders, of the big bankers, the big bosses, that they can actually or want to solve the climate crisis.
We want to send a message to world leaders and the people negotiating in Glasgow that we need real change now. We don't need promises, we need them to implement. We need to hold the world to 1.5 degrees of warming. We can't go any higher, it's too dangerous. You know, they're all words. Washing, all promises, but we need to see the implementation.
I think we're just fed up. We need the change to happen now.
Mangrove trees are said to store 50 times more carbon in their soil by surface area compared to tropical forests and 10 times more than temperate forests. This phenomenon makes this conservation of these coastal trees all the more important in a bid to combat global warming and climate change. Today, we tour Gazi Bay in Kenya's east coast and look at how the local community are conserving mangroves.
If we are to imagine a situation without the mangroves, that would mean there will be more cases of global warming because there'll be a high amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Another situation without the mangroves is Gazi being known as a community that is highly dependent on the fishery sector, then that would mean there will be a reduced productivity in the amount of fish that is caught. which will in turn greatly affect the livelihoods of the local communities. My name is Rahma Rashid Kivugo. I am 24 years old. I currently work with the Mikoko Pamoja Community Organization, which is the first community-led project in the world to engage in the sale of mangrove carbon credits. So basically, the project is located in the southern coast of Kenya, that is in Gasi Bay. We started working as a project in the year 2013. So basically, what Mikoko Pamoja does is conserve and protect the mangrove ecosystems. We work with two communities, that is the Gasi and the Makongeni communities. These are small villages constituting of about 6,000 people. Mangroves are known to be the third most productive ecosystems after the seagrasses and the salt marshes. They usually aid in the absorption of CO2 and other related greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. They are known to sequester in or absorb up to 8 times more than other terrestrial ecosystems or other terrestrial forests. One, they are a habitat for the different marine species available in the ocean. They're also responsible for acting as a natural wall that shields the coastline against cyclones or flooding and all that. They're also known to serve as a protecting ground for the young fish against the predator fish. Generally, I can say that they have both ecological and economic factors, economic benefits that they bring to the people around them or the biodiversity around it.
We have many types of the mangroves, but there are some which are best for the sucking of the carbon. Like this one I'm showing you, this is the best one, which sucks the carbon 5 times than any other tree, this type of mangrove here. And this is the type also we have to find the seedlings and we plant them there in the nursery. After some months, we take them away again. We're going to plant them in the other gardens there. But the challenge is when you plant 4,000 of them, may remain about 1,000, 1,500 because some die, some go with the water. That is the challenges. Because the seed of this is just like this thing here. The seed of like this, just like this. When it drops down, when it drops down, when it is stuck there, then it keeps growing already. It's like that, just like this one. When it drops, but when it drops like that, it stands still. It's already growing in. When we sell the carbon to Plan Vivo, they do their calculation and they bring us for money. I think what we got, because for the first time when we received this money, it is when we knew that, we used to cut the mangroves, we spoiled them for the firewood and for the building the houses, but now we can get money and we can decide to do our things. That is the day which I won't forget. We have improved because now the mangrove are, even the acres we had before, there are now many of the mangroves which are growing up. Because now it's about 3 years we were closed down, no cutting, no anything from the central government. So it's nice for us because the acres which we keep them, they're now doing very well. And when we're going for monitoring there, we go for checking there, I think things are not bad. I think some years coming, the forest of mangrove will be very big. And that is why every year we have to plant some more mangroves.
Basically, mangroves are usually degraded by both natural and human-induced factors. By natural factors, we're speaking of the climatic changes. So through the global warming, we tend to notice an increased rise in the sea level. How this affects the mangroves is that when the soil comes in, it tends to suffocate the mangroves, and in that way, these trees cannot breathe, or these trees cannot obtain the nutrients that they need for survival. What previously existed was a situation where a lot of mangroves were being cut down by the communities to provide for timber and firewood needs. This led to the destruction of huge acres of mangroves. We can have an example here. This is an example of a mangrove that was previously cut down. So what usually happens is the previously cut down trees do not regenerate. Once you cut them down, they hardly come back to life. So what we do as a project is come back in to replace the exploited trees, the degraded trees. This is one of the areas that was previously degraded. It was very much degraded to an extent where there were no mangroves in this area. So what Mikoko Pamoja has been able to do is replant the lost mangroves over the years. We do it every year. We are supposed to plant 4,000 seedlings in a year. Over the years, we've been able to observe a reduced rate in the exploitation of the mangroves by the local communities. This is because they've been able to realize the benefits that come along with the conservation or protection of these ecosystems in terms of increasing the productivity of the fisheries sector. The first people to notice the benefits of the mangrove ecosystems were the fishermen in this village, because after a long-term destruction of the mangroves, they noticed a decline in the amount of fish. So at that time, it was pretty easy to convince them that they need to protect this ecosystem for their own benefit, which was going to contribute to their livelihoods.
Mangrove are one of the most threatened natural ecosystems. And I can see that between 1990s and 2000, the loss of mangroves was 1 to 2%. And if the degradation was continuing in that rate, there could have been no mangrove in the next 100 years. The cost of doing nothing means we shall continue losing mangroves. And when we lose mangrove, we shall have effect on fisheries. There'll be no fish, there'll be no harvestable wood, there'll be a lot of the most significant parties, the sea level will rise. So it will lead to destruction of properties and life. And also, critically, there'll be the increased carbon emission, and which is really the major concern now under Paris Agreement. We are the first country on earth to sustainably manage, protect mangrove, restore them by using carbon credits. And that project, Mikoko Pamoja, it's well known, is the first one which is led by the community, where the community are paid to protect their mangrove through the sale of carbon credit. So the credits that they sell, they are able to plow back and support water and sanitation, education, health, and also plant more mangrove. So that project is one of our innovative ones here in Kenya. Another part we have really worked very hard is we are trying to include mangrove in the climate change agenda, the nationally determined contribution. If that is done, we shall be able to accelerate our achievement of Paris Agreement and on the SDG.
So today we'll be having our monitoring activity. This is usually done thrice in a year. This is the third and final one this year. So basically what we'll be having today is dividing ourselves into the different groups. That is 3 groups of 7 members each, and then move forward to the plots, have a brief training with the community, and go ahead with the entire monitoring activity.
We are monitoring a number of plots, so we are running transects from the sea towards the land. So here we are doing a transect. So we identify one tree, we mark the tree. That is our origin, that's our tree number 0. So we do a plot, a 10 by 10 square plot. Then within the plot, we count the species of mangroves within the plot. We measure the diameter at breast height for the different species. Then we also, within the plot, we also check the young juvenile trees. Then we also want to check if within the plot there are any trees that have been cut. Then once we do that, we'll be able to capture everything within the plot, then we move on to the next one, so that in our analysis we'll be able to tell the larger area based on the different samples that we've collected. Yeah.
Okay.
So as a scientist with Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, we are coming in today to support the community and the Mikoko Pamoja organization to actually monitor their forest. So we are bringing in the technical expertise to make sure everything is being done according to book, and they're following the laid down procedures and the laid down principles, so that they can actually sell their carbon credit in the market without any issue. Yeah, and with time actually transfer this knowledge to the community, so that over time they can actually be doing it on their own without our input. Today was interesting. From our observations, everything looks nominal. From the forest, we're seeing a lot of regeneration, which is good, which is a very good sign. But also, on the other hand, we observed a number of stumps, so which clearly shows that there's some leakage coming from the forest. Basically, people are extracting wood from the forest. It's very minimal, but it's also interesting to note the areas so that we can actually improve surveillance. But so far, everything looks very, very good.
My name is Matimi Amadi. I am the tour guide from the Gazi Women. It's an ecotourism venture. Today we are celebrating about the launching on phase 1. We expect to get more visitors, local and foreign tourists. They come here to learn about the species of the mangrove, and also the learning about the bird watching. It's about my family, because my family, I am the one who I take care for anything. So I struggle myself to do better tour guiding so that I can get money to help my family.
I mean, there's the uniqueness of the mangroves, and there's also the benefit, the whole benefit that they bring to the universe. So a small effort in terms of conserving them or protecting them doesn't just only benefit the local communities, it benefits the whole globe. You're able to support the existence of life, not just the human life, but also the life of the other marine organisms that are located basically in the ocean too. I think it's essential for us to involve the younger generation in the conservation of these ecosystems, but more awareness is definitely needed out there. This should be a continuous process that only the younger generation will achieve in due time.
We need to live in harmony with nature. Nature will make us survive as humanity. We cannot distinguish, we cannot separate ourselves from nature. You have seen what COVID has done with all this restricted movement, with all this social distancing, the healing. For us to heal, post-COVID, we shall heal because of natural ecosystems that are healthy and they are productive. So for my next generation, they need to understand the role of natural capital, which is the natural ecosystem, in climate change mitigation and sustainable development.
Well, welcome into Sport on Africa Live. In the English Premier League, Manchester City put pressure back on United's struggling manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as they cruised to victory